Right. Good, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out on such a wet evening. For those online, it's the executive meeting for East Herts Council on the 10th of February 2026. Item 1 is apologies for absence.
No, there's no apologies tonight.
Thank you. Item 2, leaders' announcements. So as usual, obviously we're online, so please speak into the microphones. Item 3 is the minutes of the 13th of January 2026 on pages 6 to 20 of the agenda pack. So we have before us those minutes. Are you content for me to sign them, or are there any corrections, comments? Miley.
Thank you, Lisa. I propose that we accept these minutes.
Thank you very much. Seconder, please. Alex, thank you very much. Okay. We'll have a vote. Everyone in favour of the minutes, please. Thank you. Anyone against or abstaining? Okay, lovely. Thank you. Three abstentions. Yeah, thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest tonight? No. No. Good. Lovely. Thank you. Right, on to the main item tonight. It's the budget 2026-27 and medium-term financial plan 26 to 31. And that's on pages 21 to 86 of the agenda pack. And I'll hand over to Councillor Carl Britton, Executive Member for Financial Sustainability, to present it.
Thank you, Leader. This report provides members with an updated medium-term financial plan, MTFP, for the period 26-27 to 2030-31, incorporating a number of adjustments and the outcome of the provisional settlement received from government. The report also outlines details of the proposed capital programme for 26-27 to 28-29, detailing the planned capital expenditure over this period and the associated financing requirements. The outcome of the Fair Funding Review was in line with the most optimistic of our previous assumptions. This still means that support from the government will decline over the next 3 years, but not by as much as expected. Details of the settlement are outlined in section 3 of the report, with a summary of the settlement detailed at 3.15. It should be noted that the figures for council tax here are government estimates, and our own estimates are lower than these figures. After factoring this in, though, our core spending power should still rise slightly over the next 3 years, with council tax increases offsetting the loss of government funding. The funding increase is likely to be lower than inflation, however, leading to continued pressure on spending. In spite of the reduction in funding, the 3-year settlement is welcomed as it provides much greater certainty going forward and enables us to plan with more confidence than in previous years. After the production of the papers for this meeting, we have received the final confirmed settlement from the government, which provides an increase in the homelessness, rough sleeping and domestic abuse grant, which has risen from provisional figures. The final papers to Council will be updated to include the additional £108,527 grant within housing, with a corresponding increase in expenditure to offset. The review of budgets since the last MTFP has revealed a number of other financial pressures the Council is facing. These are detailed in section 4 of the report and give rise to an additional £706,000 of pressure in the 26-27 budget. In addition, it is anticipated that there will be costs associated with local government reorganisation that need to be factored into our planning. At this point, it is impossible to know the cost of LGR, but we do know that the government is expecting the costs to be borne by constituent councils. It is therefore prudent to factor this into our planning, and we have allocated a total of £1 million for this over the next 2 years, with half of this coming from reserves and half from the revenue budget. Further budget pressures may come from Beam, where the growth of the business continues to be slower than hoped. It is therefore prudent to provide a contingency for next year of £203,000. A new Beam business plan will be produced in the new year, which will build on the experience for the last 12 months and hopefully provide a more reliable forecast for the years ahead. It should be noted that the hard work of all the Beam team has resulted in significant improvements to the key performance indicators for Beam over the last year, and the business is developing new ideas and methods which are continuously improving financial performance. To counter the reduction in government funding and additional pressures on budgets, the Council needs to both continue to reduce its costs through greater efficiency and to generate more revenue to become more sustainable over the long term. The measures to achieve this are outlined in Section 5. With government funding reducing and council tax capped below inflation, fees and charges are becoming a steadily more important source of revenue for the Council, and therefore will rise roughly in line with inflation to main funding for the essential services the Council provides, both in this coming year and future years too. However, following the consultation on the parking charges, it has been decided that some rural car parks will not have the standard weekday rates increased as originally proposed, and Sunday charges will also be maintained at current levels. Full details are provided in appendices B1 and B2. The most significant change to the Council's financial position has come from the triennial re-evaluation of the Hertfordshire Pension Fund. This year, this has shown the pension fund to be in good health, and as a result, this has resulted in a reduction in primary contribution rates from 19.8% to 17.1%, and a complete cessation of the secondary rate. The net effect of these changes is a budget saving of just under £1 billion per year. This is very welcome news, and has enabled a balanced budget to be set. Some of the savings will be placed in reserve to provide a buffer against any future increases in pension costs arising from the next triennial review, or to support any redundancy costs that may fall on the Council as a result of local government reorganisation. In addition, a new reserve will be created, providing the Council with flexibility to respond to emerging priorities and pressures. The reserve will be available for executive drawdown as and when proposals are brought forward and agreed in line with the Council's priorities. A detailed review of the Council's earmarked reserves has been completed to ensure that resources are aligned with strategic priorities and financial resilience. Details of this review are provided in sections 6 to 6.5 of the report and in Appendix C. Benchmarking of the reserves position with other district councils in Hertfordshire has shown that our reserves are below the average level, but not by an amount that should cause us any concern. The proposal for council tax is to increase by 2.99% in 26-27. This is necessary to maintain the funding level and reflects the assumptions made by government in setting out the funding settlement. The increase equates to £5.99 per year for a Band D property and is below the level of inflation. The Section 25 statement is provided in Appendix D. This is a statutory report that accompanies the annual budget for East Herts Council. It provides members with an independent assessment of the robustness of the Council's budget estimates and the adequacy of its reserves, ensuring that financial decisions are made with a clear understanding of the risks, assumptions, and the Council's overall financial resilience. A summary of the capital programme is provided in Section 7 of the report, with the details in Appendix F. Limited capital receipts mean that the 26-27 programme is restricted to priority schemes or schemes already approved. Further projects will only be considered as receipts from asset disposals as they become available. The budget and medium-term financial plan was reviewed by the Joint Audit and Governance and Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting on January the 28th. The minutes of this meeting are provided in Appendix F, along with a summary of the key points raised and responses to those points. The list of the recommendations to be submitted to Council for approval as part of the final budget for 26-27 can be found on page 22, and I'd like to propose this report.
Thanks very much, Carl. Could I have a seconder, please? Joe, thank you very much. Questions, comments? Would anyone like to? Tim?
Yeah, it seems galling that we're having to pay for LGR when we don't particularly want to, or maybe we don't want it to go ahead, or maybe it's a great idea, I don't know. But we're having to pay for it ourselves rather than the central government. I just wondered, Carl, if you had any sort of notion as to whether we'll be incentivised to minimise the cost of that, or is that likely that we're going to have to pool our provisions to a greater sort of fund, for the new unitary authority? So are we going to be incentivised, do you think, to be able to make it as efficient as we possibly can?
My instinct there is that there's probably a lot of unknowns, and I think we've just put this money aside, and there's really no information yet as exactly how LGR is going to proceed. We obviously don't even know what option is going to be chosen yet. I think the money that was set aside has been agreed. All the district councils and the county council have all agreed to put some money aside. So we're just kind of putting it in a pot at the moment, and obviously the detail will come out, I think, later. I don't know whether Brian's got anything further to add on that.
No, not really, not at this moment in time. Obviously, once we know where the government is heading in relation to what number of unitaries, that will then start determining how much the cost will be associated with each of them, because they've got a different value on each of them. Just a bit more information in another area. I noticed one council in a different county, I've set aside £2 million towards their costs for LGR. So again, you could question, have we put enough one side? Who knows?
Thanks. Any other questions, comments? Sarah?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Thank you, Carl, for your very detailed introduction of the report and explaining everything. And I just wanted to echo your comments about the staff at Beam. There's a huge amount going on at the moment. They're looking at all aspects of the building and the programming, and they have been for a while, and they're continuing to do that. And there's some fantastic things in the stalls. So yeah, it's a huge amount of work going on there. I just wanted to echo your comments. Thank you.
Thanks. Miley?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, thank you to the executive member for explaining everything so clearly. I do have one question. I understand that the government grant to us now, they've been trying to simplify things, and they've rolled some of the grants all into one. And this has had an effect on the grant for homelessness prevention. And apparently in our accounts, we've had to set aside some money to pay for that, to cover the homelessness prevention, which in effect means that the government grant to us has been reduced. Am I right in that? And is there anything we can do about it?
I'm not aware that the government grant has been reduced. I think it's fairly complicated, and I might just pass that one to Brian, who might have a better idea of whether it has reduced.
Yeah, so within the RSG element of fair funding bit that we've got, the temporary accommodation elements that was previously allocated separately as part of the homelessness grant has been taken out of the homelessness grant and moved into RSG. So around 400k we have set aside from that RSG money for TA, temporary accommodation costs, which was previously what we've allocated in previous years. Obviously, on top of that, we've got now about £1 million for homelessness, rough sleeping and domestic abuse on top of that as well. So yeah, you are right in that we are having to allocate 400k of our general money towards temporary accommodation costs.
Yes, that's a sleight of hand then to reduce our overall support. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Miley. Joe?
Thank you, Ben, and Carl as well. And thanks to Brian. I think the work that's gone into this must have been extremely difficult, and you've balanced our budget, and I know there was a windfall, but notwithstanding that, a hell of a lot of hard work in very difficult circumstances and a very difficult conditions that we find ourselves. And I think if people are listening to what Carl said, there's a hell of a lot of information in there. Some really, really important information in there in terms of the bleak kind of wider economic picture that we find ourselves in. I mean, I know you talk about what the government's growth forecasts are. So these are still inflation higher than we want them to be. Very modest growth. I have absolutely nothing against Mexico. This puts us slightly below Mexico, a global south country, and it just sort of paints the picture of where we find ourselves at the moment. We are meant to be Great Britain. So I just wanted to sort of highlight those, you know, just also on that point, it seems to be slightly contrary to what we hear from central government about our future outlook as well. When you see the facts and figures on paper, it doesn't seem to marry with what we've been hearing recently. Yeah, and I suppose it's just something to highlight, especially as we've got LGR coming up. We don't know what that's going to look like in terms of exactly what the council is going to be, what the makeup of members are going to be. But this, anyone who's considering looking at that for the future, this is the reality of what you're going to be signing up for. And just bear that in mind with the promises you're going to make when you knock on people's doorsteps. But the actual reality when you get here is very, very different indeed. But yeah, absolutely fantastic work from Brian. Thank you very much, Carl.
Just come back on that and say, obviously, the reduction in funds for local governments has been going back since 2010, essentially, hasn't it? That's really when austerity started, and it's been a steady decline, and it looks like it's going to carry on declining for the next 2 years as well. Albeit not by a huge amount, but yeah, we're obviously going to lose funds to inflation effectively.
I just want to say it's reminding me of history and where we started. We started with these huge loans that have been taken out by the previous administration. And I think it's really well done to the officers and the executive member to thank you for leaving us. You know, at this point, we're still in a safe position to pay these loans off. So I think that's a job that's been done really well.
Thank you. I think it feels to me like we're in a much more resilient position now than we were 2 years ago, compared to, you know, with the kind of the outlook ahead. I think, you know, 2 years ago we were looking at kind of the next 2 years and seeing the huge amounts that we had to save, and we're not in that position anymore. We also made a lot of savings, and with the help of the pension fund, there doesn't appear to be any obvious kind of problems on the horizon. But obviously, world events can change that very quickly. We obviously only have to go back to COVID and the Ukraine war to see how things can change very quickly in terms of inflation and finances.
Dangerous words, isn't it? The risk of sudden shocks. Yeah. Any other comments? I just wanted to sort of again thank Brian and his team and Carl for the work you've done. I think we have come a long way, and I think it's also probably worth reminding anyone listening in that actually this is probably the most important paper that we pass here each year, and it's great to see it come through exec earlier on and evolve, and then go to overview and scrutiny. Obviously, it was overview and scrutiny and audit and governance as a joint committee. So they gave it a very thorough look a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's good we've got the comments from those scrutiny committees to take into account as well. So this is the sort of final stage, obviously, before it goes to full council. But it's good to see that it gets so much scrutiny, and it is really important that we take this pretty seriously as we do. And so the result is very good. I suppose I was just going to raise actually one of the comments that I think a couple of people made at that joint scrutiny meeting, and that was a question about the 250,000 reserves that are being set aside. I know you answered them, I think, at the time to say, you know, if members have ideas for how those reserves could be spent, to let us know. And I think I just wanted to sort of just restate that, make sure that members are aware, and I think perhaps you could let them know at some point, if not before full council, that they have that opportunity. I think that's important. Yeah, but otherwise, that's great. Thank you. Thanks very much. I think if there's nothing else, we can go to a vote. So all of those in favour? Lovely. Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to the next item, item 6, which is the the capital strategy, minimum revenue provision policy and treasury strategy 26-27, which is on pages 87 to 125 of the agenda pack. And it's back to you, Carl. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. The capital strategy is attached to Appendix A. This document provides a high-level overview of our capital investment programme, how it is being financed, and the processes for developing new proposals. It is reviewed and updated annually to maintain compliance with statutory guidance and to provide transparency on the Council's capital position. Currently, capital spending is very low, being funded by new capital receipts due to the high level of existing debt. As assets are sold and receipts become available, further capital expenditure proposals may be brought forward for approval. Projected levels of debt are shown in Table 6. This shows that debt is now falling and is expected to continue falling over the next 3 years. In Table 10, we can see how the debt impacts on the revenue account, and again we see a steadily improving picture over the next 3 years. The Treasury Management Strategy is shown in Appendix B. The Council has borrowed and invested significant sums of money. It is therefore essential that the Council manages the inherent risks in these activities. The Treasury Management function also needs to manage the Council's cash flows to ensure the correct funds are available at the point at which they are needed. This report provides detail on the external economic factors that may impact the Council. It also details the borrowing strategy and the investment strategy employed by the Council to ensure the financial risks are managed prudently. This strategy complies with the SIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management and the SIPFA Prudential Code for Capital Finance in Local Authorities. Appendix C is the Annual Minimum Revenue Provision Statement 26-27. Minimum revenue provision is the way the Council accounts for the repayment of debt. MRP is determined by charging the expenditure over the expected useful life of the relevant asset in equal instalments, starting in the year after the asset becomes operational, in line with the useful economic life of the asset, up to a maximum of 50 years. The Council must approve an annual MRP policy before the start of each financial year. This policy sets out the method by which the Council will calculate and charge MRP to its revenue account. For 26-27, the proposed policy continues to apply the principles adopted in previous years, ensuring that borrowing for capital purposes is repaid over an appropriate period, reflecting the useful life of the assets funded. The recommendations are shown on page 87 of the reports pack, and I would like to propose this report.
Thanks very much, Carl. Could I have a seconder, please? Marnie. Thank you very much. So, comments and questions on this paper? I've got one actually. I think I seem to remember we've got two public work loan board loans, which I think are due for repayment. Or no, they're due this year, I think, aren't they? Later this year. Do we know yet what we're possibly going to do with those? Whether they're going to go back into public works or go somewhere else? Do we have any idea yet, or is that going to be decided much later?
I think we actually got more than two, but I think we got a small one that dates back a number of years. But the two big ones, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you're right. They're going to be. I think they come up for refinancing this year. That's correct. And I would imagine we'd go back to the PWLB, but I suppose other options will be explored. I don't know whether Brian wants to just expand.
Yeah, one's due up in June, one's due up in September, both 25 million. We will obviously liaise with our Treasury advisors to ascertain the best scenario based on estimated trends in the markets. Obviously, we know from the MPC recently that there was a 5-4 to keep base rate as is. So obviously, again, I think the anticipation that that will come down further at some point. We just need to make a decision nearer to June around, do we obviously borrow long term or do we keep it short term? Bear in mind, we also need to take into account LGR in this process as well, because again, when we move to a new authority, the new bodies that we move with might have cash available to obviously offset that borrowing. Even though that borrowing will stay there, we might be able to start internal borrowing rather than external borrowing, and obviously that will be more beneficial for the organisation as a whole. So we need to take into account all those different scenarios before making that judgment.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of the impact on LGR. Is that something that you chief finance officers are already discussing then, presumably? That what we do with loans? Yeah. Okay, good. Joe.
Thank you, Ben. I mean, again, I think you noted in what you said, Carl, that our levels of debt are reducing. Where local authorities have debts that are increasing or unaffordable, that makes headlines. It's not quite sexy to say they are modestly reducing, but I think it shouldn't be seen as a given. And I think it's more evidence of, sober, sound financial planning and good management. I just wonder if it might be a question for Brian to put it into a bit more context. How we've managed to reduce those debts, why they're coming down, and are there any risks that may pause or may go in another direction?
Yeah, our debt's coming down because each year we need to set aside MRP, minimum revenue provision, which is roughly around 2% each year we need to set aside as payoff towards those debts. So again, that will show our CFR capital financing requirement, i.e. our mortgage, what is outstanding needs to be repaid. We're not proposing to borrow any more money going forward in relation to any new capital schemes. As we said in the report, that as and when capital receipts are received from the disposal programme, we will obviously look to come forward with proposed new schemes for members to consider on top of what's already in the programme for 26, 27 to 28, 29. So again, we were just trying to manage our resources that we don't go any further, because if we increase debt, we got to increase MRP, which is an impact on the revenue side. So we're trying to manage that by obviously using receipts from disposals, but also to obviously just pay MRP back each year.
Thank you very much. I think, as I said a minute ago, debts are increasing. That would be attracting attention and more scrutiny. And while that's not happening, I think it's important that that's sort of discussed out loud, as you've done. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Yeah, Vicky.
You said 2% a year. It's nearly 8 mil that we've knocked off for this year, which to me is a bit more than 2% on a 66 mil debt. So we've done really well then, haven't we?
Yes, for 26, 27, I think you're talking obviously 25, 26. We obviously are having our 2% for our normal MRP, but we're also making a voluntary MRP in relation to all the vehicles that we purchased in the year as part of the waste proposal. So again, we're looking to pay that off through disposals of capital receipts.
Okay, good. I think we're probably going to wrap it up. I've just got one more question though, Carl. I know there's been a report recently in the paper talking about our deferring Old River Lane Public Square, and I just wondered if you could just clarify exactly what we have actually deferred. So just for public record.
Yeah, I can confirm we haven't deferred anything. All we've done is we've redone the capital budget in line with the expectation. So I think obviously originally the expectation was that the capital expenditure would be, I can't remember, was it 26, 27? I think it's been moved out a year to 27, 28. But that's just because obviously the projects actually to a degree, it's in external hands. So, you know, we can only go at the speed of the developer. So we've just realigned the budget to fit in with what we expect the actual need of that capital to be.
That's great. That's very helpful. Yeah. Vicky, actually, shall I let you come in first? Yeah.
I think the key thing is it hasn't got planning permission yet because it only applied a couple of months back. And whether or not it gets planning permission, it can't go ahead unless it does get planning permission.
Yeah, thanks. Good point. Marnie.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I'd just like to confirm that the money is still there, and there is every intention, if planning permission is given, that the public square should be provided. So there's a very strong determination that it will happen, if at all possible, and has been said, because the planning application has only just been submitted. It's going to take a while to get the planning permission. But once that has been provided, then yes, the money is there. The wish to do it is very strong, and I'm sure it will happen. So I would like to reassure everybody. Yeah, so thank you.
That's lovely. No, thanks very much. That's really important to clarify. Okay, I think if we've got no more questions, we'll go for the vote. Could we have a vote for those in favour, please? Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Great. Item 7 is urgent business. There's no urgent business. Okay, so at 19:31, we'll close the meeting. Thank you.